7:45, and this is the December 15, 2020 meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission, where folks get together to move the city forward while remembering and preserving the things and the people who got us where we are. So with that, I'll ask staff to call the roll.
Travis Bailey is excused. Ian Dunn.
Here.
Nick Fountain.
Here.
Vershay Height.
Here.
Heather Leah.
Here.
Harold Millette.
Here.
Janine McAuliffe indicated she'll be late.
I'm here. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I should look up first. Never mind. Katie Pate.
Here.
John Reese.
I'm here.
Susan Singer is excused. Kay Webb.
Here.
Gaston Williams.
Here.
Okay, well, thanks for everybody for being here, and we'll move to the consent agenda. And with that, does anybody have any corrections, additions to the agenda? Then, without objection, the agenda is approved, and we'll proceed on that basis. I do remind everyone that this meeting is being done virtual, and that anybody who wanted to speak or present material had to present those materials by last Friday and had to sign up to speak. We do have a few persons listed in connection with the rezoning that'll come up in a little bit. Anybody have any questions or corrections with regard to the minutes of the November 17 meeting? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? K-Web moves to approve the minutes, and Gaston Williams seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. It's unanimous. I see all the hands. So the first item on the agenda today is a rezoning case of 501, 507, 511, and 513 South Bloodworth Street. You all may remember that it was on the agenda last month. There were several houses in various states of repair and in various time periods, and we heard a lot of discussion, and the matter was carried over until today. And but I will go through and see if there's anything fresh that folks want to say that are involved in the project. And I'll start with Ira Mabel. Ira, do you have anything to that you want to remind us of or comment on as regards to potential consequence of the rezoning?
No, sir. So there's been no change in the case since the last time you heard it last month.
Okay.
So is there?
All right, folks.
I'd be happy to if there are specific questions. Tom Johnson, would you like to make any further remarks?
Again, this is Tom Johnson. I'm with the law firm of Williams Mullen at 301 Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700 in Raleigh. And thank you for allowing me to speak to the commission this morning. Since the last meeting, Ira's correct. This has been set for the January Planning Commission meeting to be heard. We did have a second neighborhood meeting. That went well. That was required neighborhood meeting given the nature of the rezoning request. What we're in talking with Mr. Lawson, who will be redeveloping this property, or is asking for the rezoning. We're willing to do a couple of things. One is we're willing to document the structures with photography and documentation. But the other thing that he's willing to do is donate any of the three structures. There's a fourth one on the end that's a newer looking structure that he was going to move to another location, but the other three he's willing to donate to anyone who would incur the expense to move them. So anyone who would like to move them, he's happy to donate those. So those are the couple of things that have changed since the few things that have changed since the last meeting. And I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions that anyone may have.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, thank you for that. And can I just ask you to remind us of what the two zoning classifications do in terms of the height and density?
I'm happy to do that. Currently, the properties are zoned NX and OX3, and there's a little portion of R10 on these properties. Our intent is to rezone it to the residential mixed-use district, which is RX3, so it'd be limited to 3 stories in height. We were doing an urban limited designation, so it would be an urban frontage. So that's the request we're doing, and basically we are downzoning the property from the existing NX and OX to a residential mixed-use district, which is more consistent with the surrounding properties. At our initial neighborhood meeting, we had initially proposed up to 5 stories in height. At the initial neighborhood meeting, the neighbors expressed concerns about that, so that's why we reduced it to 3 stories in our request now.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Lawson, if you have anything to add, we'll be glad to hear from you. If you're content to have the lawyer do the talking, that's okay also. Hearing nothing, I'll turn to.
I seem to unmute. Sorry about that. Thank you guys so much this morning. The other thing I'd like to add is if the houses are unavailable to be moved, if I would also gladly donate anything inside the houses that might be of any value or age, be happy to do that as well. Thank you.
All right. You were breaking up a little bit, Mr. Lawson, but if I can paraphrase, I think you said that you were glad to donate the contents if it turned out that there was no real feasible way to move the structures, and I guess with no interest in doing so.
That is correct. You.
All right, thank you. Now I'll turn to staff. Tanya and staff, is there anything that you all would like to add this morning before we go back to discussion among the members of the commission?
I don't. Lee, could you unmute Colette? I don't think she does either, but just in case.
This is Colette. You're correct. There is nothing new. And we did not update the memo because nothing had changed. So that still stands.
Okay. All right, thanks, folks. Okay, I'm going to now turn to discussion within the members of the commission. Have you all, we had considerable discussion last month. You've had a month to think further about it. Where are we now? Who wants to speak up?
Is it possible?
Captain Williams, I'll call on you first.
I hate to throw a curve in here, but is it possible for the staff to put the front-on picture in? I remember we were concerned about the plain-looking house. It contained the oldest structure of the several. Was in the middle of the 3 or 4 that were being considered. Is that my recollection somewhat correct? We were worried about the historic nature of the middle property, I think.
Yes, the one on the corner. While Tanya's searching for that photograph, our staff is pulling that up. The one on the corner was a late 1930s sort of structure. The second or third one was estimated to be 1850, 1860 vintage, as I recall. And so, yeah, there's the late 1930s model, or potentially 1940s. That one there, I believe, is the older one with the double front. And that one is also older, but it's had a lot of changes. It's difficult to find what might have been original in there. So now, and then the one on the far end was the one that the applicant's hoping to move to. The one in the picture now is the one that the applicant hopes to move to another site. So, everybody seen that? Okay, if staff can pull that down, yeah, I'd rather see the faces so we can see who wants to be heard. So I can see who needs to be heard. Is there a further discussion? Applicants proposing to arrange to allow removal of contents. I guess that would include mantelpieces and doors or whatever. The applicants are proposing to document with photographs of what used to be there. And so let's see.
Heather has her hand up.
Yeah, Heather, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I have a few questions, but we can come back to some of them if other people want to speak. So I've done a little bit of research of the area, and I spoke to a historian of kind of South Raleigh and Southeast Raleigh over the past couple of weeks. And one of the things I had not been aware of, and if any of you know any differently, please, join in here. So I'm sure most of us know that Raleigh originally had about 12 to 13 freedmen's villages, but that Oberlin and Method are the kind of main ones that still exist today. That this part of Raleigh, the history does date back to some of the other 13 freedmen's villages, which were in that area and in that community. And given that, I was just wanting to know what is being done to kind of point back to the history of that area. Because when we talk about, developing and changing areas, one of the risks is just kind of losing all of the history tied to that area. And I just want to make sure that there's something being done to kind of point back to this important piece of history and how this part of Raleigh ties into this part of history all the way back. Right now, obviously, the structures and the layout of the neighborhoods still maintain at least some of that history and that story. So I was just curious if anything had been thought of or was being considered to help make sure that that part of Raleigh history, which is already kind of at risk of being forgotten anyways, isn't lost even more.
Well, it's a good question. And I would say part of that responsibility falls on us, not on somebody else. And, but it is a good question. And so let's see I'll ask Mr. Johnson to comment in a moment, but I think we'll see what all questions there are before and let him respond to those all at once, maybe more efficient. But that's a good question. Are there other questions? And so Ian has a question or a comment.
It's a question. I'm wondering how much effort will be devoted to finding people to move these properties. I'm sure you can understand how easy it is to say we're going to offer these properties up to be moved, but getting the word out takes some effort, and I'm wondering if they have any ideas on how they're going to do that.
Okay.
Nick, this is Colette, if I can cut in. I would also like to remind you all that the mitigation measures that the applicant has suggested have not been formally submitted as a condition, a zoning condition. So that would be something that you should ask for as well. Ian, to respond to your question, there was a rezoning case at the end of 2018, I believe, for Pool Road. The condition included steps for advertising and gave a timeline for moving the house if possible. So you can look to that as an example.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Are there other comments and questions? John Reese.
Is there any understanding or history or record of how, because I was looking at the other blocks in the neighborhood and I'm very concerned about the district and the fabric of it being lost. And I'm wondering about the apartments and or whatever those condos are that are just north of this block. How did they come into being those other buildings being torn down? Is that something that happened prior to Prince Hall being designated, or is it something that we as RHDC approved or supported in the past?
I'm pretty sure it's the former, but I'll let Colette or Tanya respond to the question.
Hi, Tanya here. If I'm remembering correctly, the ones that you're referring to just up the way were vacant was a vacant parcel for years and years and years. My recollection is when I moved here in 2007, it was a vacant parcel with like half a dozen houses sitting up on, rails, getting ready to be moved someone else. So it's, if RHDC was involved, it was, it's been, over a decade. And I don't have the history on that.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? Heather, you got another?
Yeah, I had a couple. But one of them, and it's kind of a repeat from last month, that was never fully answered, and I'm hoping it being a month later, there might have been more thought put into this and maybe some new answers. I have a lot of appreciation for the attempt to save these structures. So I want to say that I appreciate that and that effort, and I think that's a really wonderful thing. But a concern I have still is when we talk about the price point of the newer structures, is that, and again, especially given the history of this neighborhood, which has traditionally been not of that income bracket. And I mean, we're talking about dating back to freedmen's villages, where people who were released from slavery began to first build in Raleigh their community. I'm just concerned that no matter what we do to make a new structure look like the historic part of the community, that because of the gap in the income levels from traditionally what that part of Raleigh has been, is that it's going to impact the cultural history of that area. And I just would like to know, has there been any thought put into how the influx of people brought in that are going to be of a different income bracket, is there a way to help preserve the cultural history of that area, or is this kind of inevitably going to change that? And if so, how okay are we with that? And is there anything else that could be done?
Okay, thank you for that. And okay, let's see who else is out here. Katie?
Yeah, Heather, in a similar vein, one question I had is kind of thinking about how projects like this can contribute to a pattern of displacement without any replacement for those residents. And so I'm just looking, at the application. I often feel words like developing area or revitalization are just synonyms for gentrification. And that's concerning to me. And I'm curious how many residents of these structures would be displaced, and if there are any similar or available rehousing options in the same neighborhood for a similar price point, or would this displace them completely without anywhere to go in this neighborhood?
And Katie, that is definitely what I'm trying to get at, is if people are pushed out by the new price point, we're pushing away the people who have lived there since possibly the beginning. And if we do that, that seems to impact history, not to mention people.
All right, well, let me step in here, and I'm going to hand this handful of points and questions back to Tom Johnson to respond to all of those that he can recall, and then we'll help him remember the other points if need be, as to what your thoughts were with regard to those projects and how we balance all of these concerns in our city.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to comment about a couple of things. We're willing to, as Colette was mentioning earlier, we're willing to add conditions that would deal with documenting the properties. And then we're also willing to add a condition with respect to offering the houses for moving with an advertising and a timeline condition, as was suggested. If those conditions can be shared with us as far as what you've done in the past, we're willing to do that. We've not done that yet, but if part of the recommendation is to add those conditions, we're in agreement to that. With respect to documenting the history, I mean, we're willing, we'd said we would donate the structures, but there's also the opportunity, if the structures can't be moved, that some artifacts within the structures could be removed. And if somebody wanted to remove them, or maybe the City of Raleigh Museum, there could be some artifacts there and some description of the area and the history of the area and where they came from. I mean, that we're certainly would be open to something like that. So far as the nature of the neighborhood, I mean, these are not properties where there have been long-term residents. These are rental properties. So these properties in and of themselves are not of that nature at all. And in fact, the one property that we're planning on, Mr. Lawson's planning on moving somewhere else, was moved from another location in the 2000s. So I think it was about 2008, if I recall correctly. So this doesn't have a particularly historic nature. There are residents who have been there long term in this area at all. In terms of affordability in the area, there's Carlton Place that's already in, adjacent to this location, and there's property that the city owns directly behind these properties that the city has indicated the intent is to try to do some affordable, offer some sort of affordable option there. I understand there's nothing concrete at this point. And the discussion has been with respect to the one home that Mr. Lawson's already talking about moving. He's been talking with the city about moving that potentially to a lot the city owns to allow a single family residence to remain. As far as the changing in the neighborhood and who's there, really, if in participating in the neighborhood meetings, there are a lot of individuals that have moved into this area that were not long-term residents. There's some long-term residents, but there's also been the change of new residents moving in to these properties. So it's a combination of both. And so the changing in the neighborhood has been occurring with other folks moving in already. But so far as these properties are concerned, that's not going to change that nature because none of these folks are long-term residents at all. So we're not displacing anyone of that in that nature whatsoever. These are rental properties.
Mr. Johnston, let me ask you, do you recall or do your clients know how many lots the city has back behind these houses?
Mr. Lawson will need to speak to that. I can't recall how many lots it is. He may know. Robbie, do you know how many lots that is that the city owns behind it?
There we go. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you a little bit, Robbie. It's kind of hard.
There are 6 lots. 6 lots.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Did the board hear that? There's 6 lots that the city owns behind.
All right. Thank you for that. Now back to so everybody hear what Mr. Johnson offered, and did you hear the comments and were they generally responsive to the concerns that you had expressed, or do you want to follow up with another question?
I have another question, a couple more questions.
Heather, go ahead.
So with the rental properties, from what I have researched and heard from some of the people who have lived in that area, either currently or within the past, 30 years or so, yeah, that area is historically rental. It's been rental even, all the way back. Even when it was an area for freedmen's villages and people, as those became more integrated into Raleigh, it still was rental properties. It would have been perhaps white families who were renting to Black families who needed a more affordable place to live. So this was property that was owned by other people with more money, rented out by people with less. So when you say it's rental properties, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not displacing history, people who have historically lived there, or just because it's rental properties, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just, historically not going to impact the culture to push people out, because it has historically been rental properties, even dating all the way back.
All right, thank you. I'm going to call on, I think Verche Height had her hand up.
I did. I had, I think, 3 questions that I just wanted to tack onto the discussion. The first, I was trying to look through the paperwork. I just wanted the applicant to confirm whether the intent was for these townhomes to be sold or rented in the end. The second question, I'd just like to hear a little bit more about the second community meeting and how that went. And then the third, and I don't know if we have any authority in this, right? But I know we're talking a lot about the history and who will eventually take ownership of this site by occupying it. But I'm also curious about, moving forward in the future, if this goes through, who will design and build it, and if there is any sort of requirement about the use of historically underutilized businesses in that effort.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, you want to respond to that? There were 2 or 3 things. What's the future use of the site?
And the use of the site is to put approximately 10 to 12 townhome properties.
For sale, presumably?
For sale, yes, absolutely for sale. And they're being designed locally by Clearscapes. So we're using someone local to do that.
But
in terms of the nature of the properties.
Okay, just to clarify for the group, not a hub organization.
No, I mean, and Mr. Lawson himself is going to be developing this, so it's not someone else doing that. And in terms of the properties themselves, these properties are rented predominantly. I think there's one that a corporation rents, but the others are young people. I mean, I'm talking folks in the 20s, 30s, so it's not older people that are renting these properties that have been there forever either. That's not the nature of these properties and what they are at this point in time. So I did want to make sure you understood that. But the clear intent is, in redeveloping this to try to redevelop it with 10 townhomes consistent with the other developments in the area and consistent with the community. So this type of redevelopment has already occurred within this district over time. And so this is not something unusual or different that's being proposed. It does allow for more housing stock in the area because there will be 10 townhomes instead of the 4 homes that are there currently. So it is providing for more density and proximity to downtown. But the nature of this neighborhood is already, regardless of this redevelopment, the nature of the neighborhood, or at least the nature of these homes in this area, has changed.
Let's see. I think John Reese had his hand up a minute ago with a further question. Am I mistaken? Okay. Any further questions? Gaston Williams?
Pardon me for being a little direct. I just need to understand something. In our last meeting, we put this off for a month so that we could nail down some conditions. And as I understand it, either because of circumstances or whatever else, that hasn't really been done, right? To date, in writing? Staff?
Mr. Johnson, you want to respond to the conditions and where you are on that and whether you've added any since last month?
Well, we were working on the wording of those conditions, and we are willing to add the 2 conditions, and these are the ones that we discussed since last month, and that is the documentation of the properties as we move forward. And then we came up with the additional condition that we didn't discuss previously to offer the homes to be moved. And we're willing to do, as was suggested, the advertising and timeline associated with that. So those are 2 conditions we're willing to add. If it's part of your motion, you would want to say that those conditions be added, then we will take care of documenting that.
Now, Gaston, I got to try to keep us talking one at a time for the sake of the audio. But so back to you, Gaston.
There's a third condition, and that was if all else fails, that you would offer the contents of any or all the houses for any historical group that chose to undertake the removal of them, if there is any such thing in the houses. Wasn't that in our discussion too?
Yes, he indicated that they were prepared to do that as well. So with that, unless there's some other question, I'm sort of thinking that we ought to begin to itemize what conditions we think need to be there. Heather, I'll come back to you on that. But I think in this process, we need to be itemizing what conditions we think need to be included here. So Heather?
Well, there was a question that I didn't hear him answer that Verche asked and that I was curious about too. So we wanted to hear how the second community meeting went. You know, when you say your residents, how many are meeting with you? Do they live directly in that area? And how are they feeling about this? Because that's very important.
Tom Johnson.
Yes, I'm happy to share with that. We had good attendance at the meeting. It was individuals who lived in the area. You know, so far as this project in and of itself, there really weren't many direct comments about the project itself. There were general comments made about the concern about how everyone's property taxes are going up. That's unrelated to this project, but that was an area of general concern. And then there was a general concern mentioned, you know, about affordable housing in the area, which we've already discussed here as part of this committee. But those were the two main things that were mentioned at the meetings. We had good participation and very good discussion. I think the last meeting was planned for an hour and we went over that time, and Ira Mabel was really good about sharing the regulations and what they meant and responding to those questions. So it was a very good open meeting. We had local residents who participated and there's good discussion, but no specific mention of anything other than those general policy issues, which we encourage the folks that participated to bring that before council. Because I think those are general concerns that would be appropriate policy decisions for council.
Okay, Verche, hi.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to also follow up on one of my other questions. Do you have any plans, or could you detail any intent, if you have them, to use any hub businesses as far as any part of your development process for these structures? Again, noting to the committee, I'm sure you all know this, ClearScapes is a great firm, but they are not a hub business.
There's no particular decision on using hub businesses at this time. Certainly that's something that could be considered, but there has been no consideration of that to this point.
I have something.
Heather? Okay, Heather.
Yeah, I want to back that up in that, given that the nature of this community that's being impacted is that it's a historically Black community, and that traditionally in Raleigh, we have had problems with historically Black communities being, you know, kind of overtaken with new developments, with no regard for the history that's being lost there. I do think that perhaps having historically Black organizations benefit from this in some way in this development, whether, you know, hiring them for different parts of it could help with that. So I just wanted to double down on what she's saying, but at least give back as well.
All right, so all right, folks, let's think now about my thought is this. I think we have a rare and unusual opportunity right here, potentially move these houses back on the city-owned lots. It's not going to be typical that there would happen to be city-owned lots right behind these properties. It won't happen in the next block or the block after that, but it might be an option that should be explored here. So let's think about this. One of the things would be that we would want to include would be encouraging historically underutilized contractors, subcontractors, and the like, whether from the design people to the GC to the subs on down, to have some opportunity to be involved in this process, since it's one of the ways that we encourage those communities to participate in Raleigh's growth and in the development of an economic future for them and their family. So there's that piece. There's then in my view, we need a rigorous effort to explore with the city moving these houses, and the one in the middle is the one that's of most concern to me. But I don't know what we find when we get on the site, and I can barely tell what might be beneath the third one at all. And the brick one on the corner will be somewhat more challenging than the second one, I believe. But, so moving the houses, and what else do we need to document these. We need to offer them and to go through a process of offering the structures, which may be aided or complicated by the issue of city lots to the rear. But all of those things. Now, what else was it that we mentioned here that ought to be included if we're going to vote in favor of this proposal? John Reese?
We had talked about making sure that any elements that might be of interest to Raleigh Museum, all those kind of things are donated in the right position. I want to add to that, if these houses are to be removed, that any materials that are able to be reused, i.e. through Habitat for Humanity or some other material saving or material selling, reselling organization, can come and take what they need, just so that we can minimize the absolute disgraceful waste that we go through on tearing things down like this.
Okay, so we've got the reuse of the materials. We have the development of a mechanism for historic groups, city museum rather, to have the benefit of artifacts in the event the houses can't be moved. And then explore with the city the moving the houses and then opportunities for others to move them wherever, and an appropriate notice advertisement in that regard. And then the utilization of hub contract people. Let's see, what else?
I'd just like to make a somewhat of a little amendment to this, is that if the houses are to be moved, they need to remain in that neighborhood fabric. I mean, just because we save the houses and they're moved to some lot in North Raleigh doesn't necessarily mean that we're really doing anything to preserve the fabric of the neighborhood. And this is the district, and that is our job, is to maintain the historical nature of the neighborhood.
Tanya,
let me respond to that. I think economics and the whole issue of taking down telephone lines and wiring is going to preclude moving these houses to North Raleigh. And our experience with the Lush Run, that was different because we took it totally apart. But when we moved the All Saints Chapel there on Morgan Street, that was a major undertaking to get that moved about 4 blocks. So I think that will take care of some of that, but your point is well taken, that it needs to be nearby, and maybe we want to have the word nearby or within the district. I would rather save the dwelling and have it a block outside the district than lose the dwelling because we couldn't find a place in the district. So those would be my thoughts. Anything else, Katie?
No, I was just agreeing with you. I agree. I think that regardless of the placement, we should make every effort to save the structure.
Well, thank you, Katie. I always call on the people agreeing with me. Kay Webb, you've been silent.
I was just going to say, I don't think these houses are technically in the Prince Hall district, but they are in the National Register Historic District. And so last month, that was my concern, removing these houses, how that would affect the National Register Historic District. So I'm in agreement with, trying to move them in the area because it would still be in the National Register Historic District.
Okay, thank you for that. Versailles Height, did you have another point?
Yeah, it's kind of a question. I know that the owner offered to do the documentation that we're requiring before moving these houses or removing them. Is that does that get overseen by anyone or any group that we would recommend that they work with in order to do that properly?
All right, so hold on a second. Then Tanya, when we do the documentation thing, what is the process?
So it depends on what the condition says, and we staff generally works with it. The last case that had this, actually the two cases where there was documentation, basically it just came back to us, RHDC staff, and we reviewed and took what was acceptable. For example, there was an archaeological study required for that case up on Lenore Street. That was just finally done. And the last one was just some photographs. So if I'm not sure if that's what you mean, Verche, or if you're looking at where they would actually, place the documents. But typically the city's rezoning cases, they send everything back to us.
Okay, no, that's what I was looking for, just from a content collection and making sure that everything was documented as we needed for our records.
Right. And what I was...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was about to ask Colette, but since I'm already talking, what we can do is staff can work up a draft memo reflecting what you're talking about today and send back to you electronically to sign off on before it's formalized, to make sure that
I think that would be useful. And Katie, did you have something else? I was sort of going to go around the room here and see if anybody has anything else to say or add.
Yeah, as part of that documentation, I'm curious if it would be useful or possible to amend this rezoning application for public record, because it doesn't acknowledge the existence of any historic resources or significant structures. So if there was some type of study done on the historic resources of these properties, would it be possible or helpful whatsoever to change the rezoning application? I would just like to see it acknowledged by the applicant in that manner, that there are resources and things of significance worth retaining, and was interested that there was no acknowledgement of that in the application.
Well, Katie, I guess I'd say that that's our role, is to make sure these things take place, and I'm not. It's asking a lot of an applicant to invite additional complexity and issues, and I have some understanding of where they sit, but on the other hand, we have our job to do, and that's what we're sitting here doing right now, is to make sure that these things do happen and that people do reflect on these matters. Even if it's true that affordable housing is a broader issue than just this block or this handful of houses.
Tanya here. Katie, I would suggest that when they, assuming they do actually offer up the conditions, that the acknowledgement of historic properties would be part of them adding the conditions, because otherwise there's no point in them having the conditions there. So I think they won't go back and fill in that box on the application form where folks are supposed to list, yes, there's historic stuff here, but when they offer conditions, it will be reflected there.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's good, and I think Mr. Johnson hears everything we're saying. Ian, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't.
Okay, and Janine McCullough, your picture's next on my screen.
No, I don't have anything to add.
All right, thank you. John Reese, anything else?
I would like to add another kind of condition in here, and that reflects what Verche was saying about HUB and encouraging that if whatever HUB or a certain percentage, and that can be something that we talk about or don't talk about, but a certain percentage of participants are HUB.
All right. Heather, anything else?
I wanted to mention, when it comes to the community and how they're feeling about it, I'm still concerned that the community may not be completely on board with this. Several community members did reach out to me and expressed concern with this development. So I'm just a little concerned still about how the community around there is feeling about this. And I know gentrification isn't technically something that historians are going to be worrying about. We're more worried about saving the historic structures. And I'm so happy that there's discussion about saving the structures. But I wonder to what extent historians should be concerning themselves with gentrification, because I am concerned that that could be what's happening here, and that will change overall cultural history of that area no matter what you build there. So I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Harold Millette, anything on your part?
I think the concern I really have is just the relocation of some of the homes. I thought there were great points brought up about keeping it in the district to keep the fabric of the neighborhood together, but that is also will be very limiting to the relocation. And I'll be more open to saving the homes in general than to keeping it within the district or neighborhood. And I don't know, it's really similar to what Heather was getting to. This is a economic battle, really, trying to preserve these homes and neighborhoods and stop developers from coming in and kind of destroying the fabric of these districts and neighborhoods as well. So
yeah, as I mentioned when we started the meeting, we have a role in balancing the preservation of the structures in the community with the economic realities of a rapidly growing city, and none of it's easy. Gaston, do you have anything else? I'm sorry, you were muted. Still don't hear you, but I take that as a no.
I'm good.
Okay. So, folks, so we've itemized a list of conditions. Are you all prepared to pass a motion that would support the rezoning subject to all these conditions, or is that not where we are headed with what we are doing?
I would like to see the conditions first before we do any vote.
All right. Well, let me ask you this, Katie. How about we ask the staff to produce the conditions or a memo outlining those conditions, but subject to our review of that we with that assumption and expectation that if the conditions are as we have been discussing them, that we would move the project forward, and rather than to come out in opposition. And frankly, I think in some sense, we'd all be glad to just oppose the project, but is that a practical solution under the circumstances and the realities of the city we live in? So I hear you, but if we can get the conditions, is the assumption that we want to see those, and then based on that, we would move forward and feel like we've done a pretty good job here, maybe better than we've done some other times in trying to do what we can for the community and the preservation generally. All right, I think I'm seeing numbers of affirmative nods. A couple of you just totally nodded off, but that's different.
Motion order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Motion will be in order.
Let me think about how to word it. The motion is predicated on the staff putting together a list in writing, giving it to all of us, including the applicant, of the conditions they intend to attach, but that we approve Do we approve a project going forward subject to the conditions?
That we do not oppose the
Do
rezoning.
not oppose the project going forward subject to the conditions.
I think that's the appropriate motion at this point. That works for everybody. Is there a okay, Kay Webb's
Second.
second the motion. Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Tanya here. I was just going to say, so we will word that memo in that the same way we've done before. Nobody can actually require conditions. All conditions in rezoning cases have to be offered up voluntarily by the applicant. But we can word it such that, you know, this is what would be needed in order for y'all to recommend approval.
I think that our understanding would be that the applicant respect our request for conditions, recognizing that we want them to proceed, but we also want to preserve history, and in good faith, I think they would probably want to adopt our conditions.
Right, and then what we can do and what we've done in the past is once the conditions have been finalized by the applicant, we will come back to a later meeting and say, here are the conditions. You know, do you want to keep your recommendation the same, and give you a chance to look at it again?
All right, I think that works, and it's a little bit like when I'm settling a case, and I tell the lawyer on the other side, if you were to offer X, then I think our clients and I would accept it. And so we're sort of suggesting to the applicant here, if you offer these conditions, then we will support your project. But the offer comes from them. Okay? Any further discussion? All right, I'm going to call for a vote then on that motion to move this item. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Raise your hand.
I raise my hand.
All right, I see hands going up. Heather, where are you on this? I saw Gaston. I saw Harold. Heather, where are you? I'll pass. Ian says Ian's in favor. Janine's in favor. Kay's in favor. John? He's not in favor. Brochet? All right, Brochet votes no. Heather votes no. Katie? All right, so let's think about that. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, and 1, 2, 3, 4 against, without regard to whether I'd vote or not. So the motion carried. So that takes care of that item for today. Tom Johnson, Mr. Lawson, we appreciate your patience, and Ira Mabel, we appreciate you helping us through this process as well. So hopefully we will have these conditions offered and back, and the project keeps moving, but we keep moving too, and so that we stay on track, and we'll see this again perhaps in January, depending on how the timing works with the process and planning commission and the like. Okay.
Nick, Tanya,
yes, ma'am. Tanya.
Just for the record, which way did you vote?
Oh, I vote aye. The reason I said that it would pass without me is because I didn't want it. I wanted it to be clear that just because I'm presiding, I don't have a thumb on the scales. So that takes care of that. We don't have any recombinations today. We don't have any right-of-way closures. We don't have any demolition by neglect issues. And we are down to the draft CLG report. I'll call on Tanya to talk us through that issue.
Great. Hello again. As a quick reminder, certified local government certification is a federal certification that is administered through the State Historic Preservation Office, and that is what allows for the commission to officially be part of National Register nomination review, and also to apply for historic preservation fund grants on projects. And of course, with anything, there's annual reporting. The draft was attached to the agenda item. Their year runs from October through September. So this would be the October 1, 2019 through September 30, 2020 timeframe. And it, highlights, the numbers of, COA applications, how many of y'all, how many are new, all that stuff. So hopefully you took a look at it. It asks for a summary of what has been accomplished over the year. And then it also has some questions, and one of which I put in the agenda item, where each year they ask what training topics the commission would find interesting. And I listed out a whole bunch there, ranging from, alternative materials to architectural history to preservation planning and a bunch more. So I'm looking for two things today. One, to gauge your interest on what I should tell them y'all are interested in learning more about, and then also and acceptance of the report, so that when I click the box affirming that everything that I put in there is true, that y'all agree with me that when I check that box, it'll actually be true. So it's an online SurveyMonkey form that I put in a PDF for y'all's review.
All right, so I'm going to open this for discussion. And frankly, Tanya, I'll start off by saying, because of the COA process and time on that, my interest is in alternative material and preservation materials and methods, because I think that helps us. But others may see other issues, and so. But let's just quickly see what do y'all see in that laundry list that Tanya ought to include in our report to the feds. Anybody?
I had just one comment.
Jay Webb?
I was going to say the quasi-judicial procedures, I think it would be helpful for everybody to be trained in that, even if you're not on the COA, because I think everybody needs to have the experience of knowing what goes on the COA.
Okay, I saw four heads nodding with you on that one, Jay. Gaston Williams, you started to say something.
Well, I feel like we're fighting a war of attrition, and therefore the tax benefit issues. If there's any way we can de-incentivize and destruction of historic properties and incentivize the preservation of them through tax laws, sounds like an awfully Republican concept, but I think it is one tool we have. I don't think denials is actually working so well, and so I think we all ought to understand it. Are there any advantages that we can point out to people who want to tear down things not to, or advantages in keeping them? It's a powerful tool, I think.
Yeah, it can be, and there are such on the federal level, and we've had them and lost them and had them on the state level with respect to preservation credits. So, Tanya, that wasn't on your laundry list, but I think that maybe that needs to be there.
There's a box for other.
Okay, great. Janine, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. My three topics I'd vote for was alternative materials, green preservation, sustainability issues, and I think the quasi-judicial procedures, there's just a lot of those types of things that even those of us on the COA, I think, would benefit from some formal introduction to all of that as well.
All right, so that's got a lot of support. Anything else from anybody? Riche?
Yeah, I just was going to add to one that Janine just mentioned, the green preservation and sustainability issues. I think there have been a number of cases that have come through COA that are directly related to this. And I think that we're going to see an uptick as the years go. So I think that would be a great one for us to have some education on.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I will say for those of you not on COA, one of the matters we've had the last several months, we just moved through and moved on, did have concealed from the street, did have a green roof in a section of the house. We've had discussions about solar panels and where they ought to be and where they ought to not be. We've had, and then there's the issues that came up in the rezone a moment ago about, if you're going to tear this stuff down, can we not reuse the material because of the enormous savings from material that's already been manufactured, already been made, and the like. So we're seeing a lot of this in terms of carrying off bad additions on houses in Boylan Heights or wherever. So there's a lot of that that's going on that we're seeing there. And I'd say to any and all of you, before your term ends, you need to take 2 years on COA if we can make that work. Okay, anything else that needs to be added on this issue?
No, thank you all very much for that. And also thank you for your responses on which of the YouTube trainings that you listen to. It's always a wonderful thing to be able to report out how interested and invested this commission is, and all of y'all are in being trained and learning about what you're doing. And we're very fortunate here, and I appreciate that.
I totally agree with you on that, Tanya. We're been an awful lot of capable people given an awful lot of time over numbers of years, and I'd like to think and do think that there's a lot of preservation that's happened in Raleigh, even with all the buildings we've lost. There's a lot that's happened, and it's because of you guys and your predecessors. Okay.
And actually, if I could get a quick vote that you accept the draft report for submittal, I also then have to get the okay from the mayor.
Yeah, sure. All right. So there's a motion from John Reese to approve the CLG report. A second from Riche Height. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Okay, all the hands went up. That carried unanimously, Tanya, and so you're off to the races on that.
Thank you.
That brings us down to action items, Leaf-the-Land Historic Context Report. Who's going to handle that item?
All right, I guess it's me. I wasn't sure. Ian and I didn't coordinate on this. So this is a follow-up actually to the McAdams House landmark designation that y'all already saw and voted on, and actually did get designated on December 1st, along with the Hillcrest Cemetery. But this historic context report was prepared as when the McAdams House application came in. So it is available for review. It's been reviewed by the research committee, and it is ready to be published and will be available for researchers and also something for the research committee to use to evaluate any other landmark designation applications that may come in for Leaf-Valand designed properties. And I am looking for a vote for y'all to formally accept it, and then also, which would then allow us to publish it on your website, and also ncmodernist.org has requested to publish it on their website as well.
Yeah, so I will say to you that looking down through that list, that George Vile house, which is down the street from mine, is maybe the only one of the first handful that hadn't been bulldozed already, which is really sad. There was some awfully nice work. I'd actually been in a couple of others at one time or another. Can I have a motion to approve? Ian makes that motion, and there's a second from Janine McAuliffe. Any discussion? And if you hadn't looked, I urge you to back up and have a look. There's a lot of education in that material and a lot of real good work that has been done. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. All right, the motion carries. All right, Heather, I was worried you weren't coming through for me. Motion carries unanimously, and we'll go to the next item, follow-up items, annual retreat. Tanya, you want to talk about the retreat? Didn't we do a doodle poll? And you got the retreat date for January 25. And now Tanya needs to know, what do we want to talk about at the retreat? And Tanya, I'd say maybe we ought to talk about quasi-judicial hearings. I think if we could talk about a few of those things that we just finished mentioning for the CLG report that folks had a strong interest in, whether sustainability, alternate materials and preservation methods. That's an awful lot of stuff to cover. And it may be a little heavy on the COA end. Are there other things that y'all want to hear about, spend time on at the retreat?
So the one thing I'd like to, remind you is that we staff can present on topics and there be a discussion on whatever you want. But I think one of the goals from staff is to hear from you. The retreat is to provide a discussion and then set the work program for the next upcoming year or two. So what do you want to talk about that you think is going to, further the mission of the commission? What is the direction that you want to head? And is there something from a particular committee that they want to talk about? And I mean, we can certainly talk about quasi-judicial, or you could say, hey, these are the topics we need to learn more about. Let's put that on our work program.
That would be another way of doing it. So let's see, how many hours do we have for this retreat altogether?
Oh, we didn't say. Up to 4, but it's going to have to be virtual, so there won't be that food break. So not 4.
Right. Okay. So folks, you got to think about it. If we really only got 3.5, 4 hours, we want to use it well. I think really, folks, let's think what do we want to get better at and do better next year, given the various battles that we and frustrations that we are feeling here. Heather, I saw your hand up. Wasn't you? John Reese.
One of the issues that I really want to stress, or at least learn more about, or at least have us be more cognizant of, is understanding that about the fabric of where we are versus the individual houses or individual moments, that we really begin to understand the broader context of focusing on the neighborhood and understanding that neighborhood's context versus just that one individual piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's good. And another way to look at it is that we could use some discussion on what are the things that we might be able to accomplish through these rezonings and subdivisions and things that come through the full body and not just COA. And in COA, it's nearly always about individual houses. And it might be that we can target some things that we want to do a better job of, and we could have a broader impact than waiting to see who applies for what when they come to us. Ian, what do y'all need in research? What are your thoughts? What do we need to be doing to identify things that ought to be listed and aren't now, and that kind of thing?
Well, I can certainly give it some thought. I don't have an answer for you right now. Continue doing what we're doing.
So we can use this retreat to give us the energy and a unified focus on the things that we think we could make the most difference on in the next year. And that would
Right.
that would be time well spent.
Right. What I was anticipating hearing, Ian, from you was at the last research committee, y'all talked about, African American history and potentially doing another survey. That'd be something you can focus on. So this can be what broad topics do you want to discuss, or are there specific projects out there that you want to do? We can go in both directions.
Okay. Let's see, Tanya, now we'll have this meeting and then we'll have an executive committee meeting where we have another full meeting of this group before we do the retreat.
There will be one meeting. I think, let's see, the retreat is on the 25th and the business meeting is on the 19th. So a week before. The idea was, to give staff time to pull it together. And if there's another resource in the city, another person that would be able to help with a particular topic, then we wanted to have time to engage that person or persons.
Yeah, I think that's good. So folks, we probably do need to get most of the good ideas out here where we want to spend time, because it'll be last minute when we have our next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, it's just a thought. May I speak to one issue about training and the retreat thing?
Sure.
I often struggle. The fabric, two parts, is how do we affect the way the city and the people in the city view historic preservation? That's always a concern I have. But the other one is, I often, it's probably my job to learn this better, but I like to see the constraints that we have, the layers of protection, whether it's a local historic designation or a national landmark or whatever. I'd kind of like to see the framework of restraint on properties, locations, historic sites, just a broad overview, 10,000 feet overview of how these layers fit together and can be woven to protect certain things we have an interest in.
Okay.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Makes perfect sense, Gaston, and something we can easily pull together.
In other words, I want to
probably already do.
Call it our toolkit. What is our toolkit for achieving our goals here? I mean, whether it's us or whether it's an owner or someone of interest in a neighborhood.
Okay. Versailles High.
I have another, topic that came out of the previous research committee meeting. I think we started through some of the connections and ideas that I think Susan and I brought to the table. I would be interested in having a discussion about how I don't know if the right word is partner, but how do we take advantage of some of the relationships that we have with complementary groups and organizations as far as their goals to increase awareness about the historic properties and promote that. I'd be curious to have a conversation about that.
Right. So, and Tanya, I want to have some discussion about the revolving fund and how do we make it bigger as well. So, and then Versailles' comment is about liaisons and connections and who are the other folks with a concern for historic resources in one way or another. And that one, and how do we keep from becoming a silo or perceiving that we're out here all alone?
Okay, this is helpful. Thank you.
All right, good. That is, now we move to committee reports, and I'll start with Ian Dunn and the research.
Hello, everyone. As Tanya mentioned before, Hillcrest Cemetery and McAdams House are officially Raleigh Historic Landmarks, which is great news. We also had a fairly lengthy discussion on the Georgetown neighborhood and landmarking FHA homes. The committee came to a consensus that landmarking individual properties was probably not the best way to go about honoring their history, considering their connection to the GI Bill, FHA, redlining, all that. But instead, having them be part of a larger context report in the future. We do recognize that their history should be told and that it's important history. But honoring them by landmarking individual properties is perhaps not the best way to go about that. The only other thing that I have is that we have requested that a consultant look into the Leitner family and its associated construction business. This is sort of an offshoot of the Hillcrest Cemetery landmark report. And there will be a joint public hearing on January 5th for the Daniels house and the Haywood house. That's all I have.
Okay. Let's see, when is that meeting?
January 5th.
Yep. Everybody be sure you got that.
Yeah, 7 o'clock p.m. You will not get the WebEx invite for that meeting likely until the Monday prior, like the 4th. So every time I see you, we're going to mention it. Please make sure it's on your calendar.
All right. As long as that's on your calendar, we're okay there. Now let's turn to community awareness. And Heather Leah had a hot new idea.
Hey, yeah. So, you know, with the pandemic, obviously, it's been harder to have events and gatherings and the things we normally would be doing, like tours or events and things like that, tables at other larger events. So we've been doing a lot of social media and virtual tours, but we wanted to do something a little bit more engaging and still be out in the community, something to sort of replace having an event. So we are working on a historic scavenger hunt. And we had sort of decided that the best way to do it would be to maybe find 5 to 7 local businesses, probably restaurants, but businesses that are in historic buildings, and then use the scavenger hunt to raise awareness about the history of the buildings. And people could go out and find, based on the clues, find one of these locations or all of them. And we'd work with the businesses, especially during the pandemic. Local businesses are also needing to get more foot traffic and people in the door. So we would team up with 5 to 7 of them to put on a historic scavenger hunt. And we'd have prizes that each location would have, probably things that we normally would be giving away at tables. And then maybe a larger prize for like a drawing for whoever finds the most of these historic places. It would help raise awareness of history in the city, get people engaged, and give them something to do during this time that's still socially distant and safe, and maybe even bring more money to our local businesses. So we're still working on the ins and outs of it, but that's sort of what we're working on as our project right now.
So Heather, then who at the moment, how are you thinking we would line up these restaurants and that sort of thing? What sort of with the mechanics of it, to the extent y'all have gotten that far, how would that probably need to work? And I'm asking you to mention that because it may be that we got to divide up these things among everybody on the screen.
Yeah, so what we're doing right now is we've made a list of places that we've identified that could be good targets, like, Mecca and a couple of Greg Hayden restaurants and things like that. Some of them we already know the people who own them or who work there. So one of the first ways of divvying it up would be to just, if you happen to know those people, you can be the one that talks to them and sees if they want to do it. The organizations themselves don't have to do a lot. Mostly just be willing to be involved and have whatever our prizes are to give to scavenger hunters that come in. The hunter would have to come in and tell them like one historic fact about their business and they'll get the prize. The businesses could also donate if they wanted to, like a 20% off coupon or something like that to help encourage people to actually eat there once they have found the spot. The other big benefit is the businesses will share this project, this event. And so we are benefiting from a lot of local businesses, social media reach, and other businesses are benefiting from each other's social media reach. And they're all kind of getting free marketing through us. So it's almost like a big marketing chain as well as a scavenger hunt that helps teach people about history. So for now, the way we were divvying it up is just, I made a document. I sent it out to community awareness. I can send it to everyone if people want to help. If you guys have any ideas of local businesses that are in historic structures or that are historic themselves, you can definitely let me know or let us know so we can add them to the list. And especially if you know somebody who owns a historic business, you know, even you might be one that could reach out and be like, hey, you want to join in with this? But again, we're looking for probably 5 to 7, start really small. We don't expect this to be a huge endeavor, more of a testing thing because, again, we're in a pandemic, so we're having to just do things differently. So yeah, to start with, we're just reaching out to some of the businesses and divvying up who reaches out to who. And then we'll find 5 to 7 that want to join in.
Okay, that's great. Wait a minute. Ian Dunn had his hand up first.
Heather, would these be Raleigh historic landmarks or just historic properties in general?
Probably a mix of both, but it would not be definitively only historic landmarks just because I'm not certain we could find enough that are also businesses. We decided on businesses. We had ideas of other just historic buildings or parks or locations. Ultimately, we landed on this because it'd be the easiest way to dispense the prizes. You know, if you could go somewhere where there's already somebody inside versus having a prize at a park or having someone email us, you know, a photo and then we have to mail out a prize to them. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so just to get you guys thinking, you know, it could be the chocolate place down there in the freight depot across from the pit. It could be the transfer hall out on is that East Davie? It could be the Mecca restaurant. And Greg Hayden used to be a member of this commission, and I think he will respond. So it won't be too hard to find enough restaurants that are really walkable. And so we can go from there. John Reese.
A little friendly amendment might be to do, if we could get one from each district that we are in, so that they're not all just right now Greg Hayden's restaurants zone of, but to get people out into understand each district that we are part of.
Okay, so certainly can write down Side Street over in Oakwood, and
Roast Grill.
right. Well, I don't even know if it's open at the moment, but anyway.
That's another challenge, finding out which ones are open and which ones are doing delivery versus letting people in.
Right.
But if you have ideas, I've written down the ones you guys just said, but if you have ideas of places that you think would be perfect, please email them to me. I definitely would love to see them and add them to the list. And again, if you know somebody who owns a business and you want to be the contact person who reaches out, let me know, because I have a little kind of like marketing document that I've created that lets the businesses know how it works and the benefits that they get from joining.
Well, there are a lot of people looking for something that they could do at this time. And so we can make it work, then that is useful. Okay, the next item, unless something else, Heather, the next item is the Lustron House, and I will tell you that we are trying to get that committee to again pull together so that we can get to the next steps. And do we have a buyer? Are we going to list it? What are we going to do with that? Tanya, you want to add anything else?
Not at the moment. I've got some, continued follow-ups to do. You did get the okay from city council to use loan funds. And I have not heard back from the potential buyer. I saw your email about setting up another meeting. It's gonna have to be after the first of the year. Budget season has started.
Nobody's needing another December meeting right now, but
right.
We need to get one on the book.
Okay.
On that.
Okay.
So it will happen.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you for that. Dorothea Dix, that committee, we have breathed life into that and have got a meeting set up on the 22nd at 1 o'clock. If you all want to be in on that as to where are we and what's going on with Dorothea Dix that relates to the historic resources and structures and the like, and where can we have an impact, that's when that committee is. So let's see, anything from nominations, Kay?
We're preparing to start recruiting for the 2021 class, which will be appointed in June, start July 1. So if you have any recommendations, please forward them to the committee. Thank you.
I did get a new name yesterday, as a matter of fact, Kay. Somebody lives in Oakwood.
All right.
I was reaching out to ask them to identify a lawyer because I thought maybe we needed to have that. And they didn't. They're not a lawyer, but they said they were interested themselves. So, so be it. We'll see what we get. But I do think, folks, that we could use the skill set that leaves when I go off is, of course, I live in a landmark, and so I help with the tally of what representation we've got to have. So we'll need somebody from Oakwood, Bowling Heights, whatever, and the skill set that I walk away with is running hearings and meetings and that stuff. So we can dump it all on Gaston, but we could use having somebody else come along with that skill set. Okay, so is there any other business from anybody? From any report of staff or otherwise? Anything else? Well, I'm not seeing any more action items, so I'm looking toward adjourning. Anything else, Tanya?
Nope.
Okay. Y'all flip to the other pages on the news of other organizations and take a moment to look through those things so that you keep up with everything that is going on elsewhere in the city while we're at it. So, but if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And John Reese makes that motion. Gaston Williams second the motion. In discussion, all in favor, say aye. And if you haven't been outdoors yet, you might still need your scraper for the frost on the windshield. I sure did.
No.
All right. Take care. Good to see everybody. If we don't talk to you again, have a good Christmas, good holiday, and we'll talk soon. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.